Their acquaintance did not start off well from the first meeting. They met at a friendly match between universities when they both were freshmen. Anthony represented the Institute of Sports Excellence, while Austin was from the California Sports Academy. That day was filled with bright autumn colors and the noise of fans. Both guys were determined to win for their teams at any cost. The California Sports Academy team won, and the team members surrounded Austin, lifted him up, and tossed him in the air, celebrating the victory. Anthony watched Austin with a tense gaze, the defeat of his team infuriating him. As Austin was lowered back to the ground, players from both teams shook hands. Austin approached Anthony with a friendly smile, extending his hand for a handshake. Anthony looked at him closely and evaluatively, gripping Austin's hand firmly and confidently. Their eyes met with a cold glint of rivalry. That same day, Austin was appointed captain of the Black Bull team for his strategic thinking and decisiveness on the field. In their sophomore year, Anthony became the captain of the Wolves due to his endurance and unwavering spirit. The spark of confrontation between them grew stronger with each passing year, turning them into fierce rivals both on and off the field. Anthony tried to understand why Austin irritated him so much but couldn't, expressing his disdain in every encounter. Austin noticed this attitude towards him but didn't show anger or irritation, only smirked and stared back with his intense eyes, feeling Anthony's heavy and attentive gaze. Austin found their rivalry amusing and enjoyed every moment of this game, knowing that each match was a new chapter in their story. Now, Anthony and Austin are seniors, captains of their American football teams. It's the eve of the final competition, which will determine the best team of the year. Anthony and Austin met at a press conference. The atmosphere was charged to the limit. "So, Anthony, ready for defeat?" Austin asked with a smirk, crossing his arms over his chest. Anthony squinted and, not backing down from the challenge, replied, "Are you so confident in your victory, Austin? We've been training all year, and I know our team is ready to show what we're capable of. We'll see who laughs last. Our guys haven't been sitting idle. We know your weaknesses and are ready to exploit them," Austin said. "Weaknesses?" Anthony asked. "The only weakness here is your ego. You constantly underestimate us, and that will be your biggest mistake." Austin squinted and took a step forward, closing the distance between them, then added, "We'll see on the field. I hope you're ready for a real battle, because I'm not backing down." Anthony didn't back down, their eyes locked in a silent duel. "Neither am I," Anthony said quietly but firmly. "See you tomorrow." The day of the final match arrived. The stadium was packed to the brim, fans of both teams shouting and waving flags. The players took to the field, the tension palpable in the air. The match began, and it was immediately clear it would be a tough battle. Both teams showcased their best skills, not yielding to each other. The score was tied until the last minutes. In a decisive moment, Anthony made a perfect pass, and his receiver caught the ball in the end zone. The referees confirmed the touchdown, and Anthony's team won. Anthony and his team erupted in joy, hugging each other and shouting in happiness. Austin stood, breathing heavily, realizing they had lost, anger evident in his eyes. Anthony approached Austin and extended his hand for a handshake. "Great game, Austin. You played brilliantly." Austin didn't shake Anthony's hand, only responded, "Today you were better. But don't forget, we'll meet again." They both knew their rivalry was far from over. A few days after the final match, Anthony's and Austin's teams, without planning it, decided to go to the nightclub Megapolis. It was a popular place among students and athletes, with a lively atmosphere and great music. When Anthony and his team entered the club, they immediately noticed familiar faces. In a distant corner of the hall sat Austin and his teammates. Anthony felt the tension but decided to let it go and enjoy the evening. After a while, following several beers and conversations about football, Anthony felt the need to freshen up and headed to the restroom. When he entered, he was met with an unexpected figure, Austin, standing by the mirror. Anthony felt the tension in the air sharply increase. Austin turned to face him, and their eyes met, both reflecting a mix of emotions. "Anthony, do you think one match changes anything? Do you think this is the end of our rivalry?" Austin asked challengingly. Anthony noticed Austin's long legs, broad shoulders, and strong neck. His mischievous amber eyes, chiseled cheekbones, and full lips. "Why the hell am I noticing this?" Anthony thought, stepping forward, his heart beating faster. "Maybe it's enough, Austin?" Anthony asked, trying to control his emotions, though he felt a mix of anger and curiosity. "Anthony, answer me honestly. Why do you dislike me so much?" Austin asked, looking Anthony up and down. "Because you piss me off, Austin," Anthony replied without blinking, staring into Austin's eyes. Austin stepped closer, their faces just inches apart. He grabbed Anthony by the collar, his breath hot and uneven. Anthony felt his own breathing quicken. In that moment, in the cramped space of the restroom, all the emotions they had been suppressing came rushing to the surface. Suddenly, instead of words, Anthony leaned in and pressed his lips to Austin's. Austin didn't expect this. He expected anything: punches, insults, shouts, but not a kiss. Austin's lips were dry and unexpectedly soft. The kiss lasted only a moment, but that moment was enough to turn Austin's world upside down. Time seemed to stop, and the sounds of music from the club became muted and distant. Anthony pulled back first, his eyes wide, a blush spreading across his cheeks. Austin looked stunned. The tension in the air didn't dissipate, but it took on a new quality, no longer hostile, but something confusing and thrilling. Austin was the first to break the silence, releasing Anthony's collar. "Anthony, what was that?" "Shut up," Anthony whispered, his voice husky. Suddenly, the restroom door swung open, interrupting their moment. One of Austin's teammates stood at the door, looking at them in shock. "Hope you guys aren't fighting?" John, the receiver, laughed, blushing. "None of your business," Austin snapped at John. He stepped away from Anthony. His eyes darted around as he breathed heavily, trying to regain his composure. Anthony's mind was in chaos. Austin quickly headed for the restroom exit, leaving the club. Over the next 2 weeks, Anthony and Austin couldn't get the kiss out of their minds. Their emotions were tangled and conflicting. Both were haunted by thoughts of what had happened and how it had changed their perception of each other. Anthony's thoughts kept returning to the feel of Austin's lips. He tried to focus on his studies and training, but whenever he was alone, his thoughts drifted back to Austin. Anthony felt that this was more than just physical attraction. He realized that he had genuine feelings for Austin. He remembered all their encounters, every confrontation, every smile, every tease, and understood that all this time he had not realized how important Austin was to him. Austin was also in turmoil. He was angry at himself for not holding back, for showing his weakness. But at the same time, he couldn't forget how good it felt with Anthony in that moment. He tried to suppress his feelings, convincing himself that it was a mistake, just a burst of emotion. Soon, Austin and his team decided to attend a friendly match between the two universities. Austin knew that Anthony's team was participating in this friendly game. When Austin saw Anthony, his heart beat faster, and he realized it wasn't just attraction. These were intense feelings that he couldn't control. Days passed, and the tension between them grew. They avoided each other, afraid of facing the feelings they couldn't explain. But the silence and distance only intensified their desires. One evening, after training, Anthony went to a party at his friend Steve's house. Entering the living room, Anthony saw Austin. Austin looked pensive. Anthony poured himself a Coke and sat on the couch. There were about 10 people, all of whom knew each other. Time flew by with conversations and games. Soon, Austin went outside to get some fresh air. Anthony followed him. Outside, it was calm and quiet, just the cool air and the two of them. Austin sighed heavily upon seeing Anthony. The boys stared at each other, scanning from head to toe. Anthony felt a surge of courage. "We need to talk," Anthony said firmly. Austin felt Anthony's burning gaze on his face. Eye to eye, the tension was palpable. "What, missed me?" Austin lazily smiled. The hoarse, deep voice made Anthony shiver. "I think you like me," Anthony said. "Interesting theory. You piss me off, just like I piss you off." "What nonsense. Why would I like you, Anthony?" Austin replied, smirking. Anthony smiled. He watched Austin's face closely. The direct gaze of those amber eyes made his breath itch. Austin was captivating, and his mind didn't want to resist. "This is terrible and very interesting. So, if I kiss you now, will you push me away? Maybe hit me and leave?" Anthony asked challengingly. "Try it," Austin replied quietly. "Take the risk." That response quickened Anthony's pulse. He did his best to keep his face impassive, his eyes darting over Austin's face and stopping on his lips. Anthony stepped closer, pressing his whole body against Austin's. The kiss was demanding. Austin responded to the kiss, wrapping his arms around Anthony's neck. All doubts and fears disappeared, only this moment and the dizzying feeling that their lives had just changed drastically remained. The street turned into a cocoon, isolating them from the rest of the world. They kissed for a long time, making up for lost time. Austin's hand slid down Anthony's back, and Anthony pressed against him, not wanting to let go. "I can't stop thinking about what happened," Anthony began. "It's not just attraction, Austin. It's something more. I realize that I have feelings for you, and it scares me." Austin sighed and looked into the distance. "Me too, Anthony. I tried to convince myself that it was a mistake, but I can't. You're important to me, and I can't ignore that." They looked at each other, understanding and acceptance in their eyes. They realized their feelings were mutual and that this wasn't just a passing fancy. Anthony and Austin sat on a bench, discussing plans for the future and sharing stories of their best moments on the field. They realized that despite their differences, they had a lot in common, which could be a strong foundation. From that day, they started spending more time together, talking, cooking, walking, and watching movies. 2 months later, Austin brought up what had been bothering him. "Anthony, are you ready to introduce me to your friends as your boyfriend? Ready to tell your parents that their son isn't what they expected? To tell them you won't bring home a girl and won't give them grandchildren?" "No, I'm not ready," Anthony replied sharply because their friends and team still thought they were enemies. "I'm flying to Europe. I got a 6-month contract with the famous club White Tiger." Austin's lips pressed together, his gaze sharp and firm. "What?" Anthony breathed out, his eyes widening. "My last exam is on Tuesday. I'm leaving at the end of the week. Tickets are bought, and all the documents are ready," Austin said, dryly and unemotionally. Anthony felt as if he had been doused with cold water. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. How could it be? He wouldn't see Austin anymore? "No, you can't. Are you seriously running away from me to Europe?" Anthony shook his head quickly, then snorted and looked into Austin's eyes. It was as if someone had turned off Austin from the inside. There was no sparkle in his eyes, no smirk on his lips, just a false, empty, and cold mask. Something inside Anthony crumbled at those words, refusing to accept or believe them. "Not everything in this world revolves around you, Anthony. I have my own life and plans, and I don't want to miss this opportunity," Austin said coldly. "That's great. Congratulations," Anthony said, his lips twisting, folding his arms across his chest. Thanks. Goodbye, Anthony. Austin turned and left the kitchen. Anthony heard Austin putting on his shoes. He wanted to rush after him, to pin him against the wall, shake him, and ask him to stay. But Anthony didn't. Everything had been clearly explained to him. About life and future plans that didn't include Anthony. It felt like he was talking to a different person. His Austin was bright and smiling, with a smirk and a mischievous look that took your breath away. Austin had never been this cold and indifferent. Just an hour ago, they were together, dying of pleasure. Now, there was a different person in front of him, and it hurt. The door closed quietly behind Austin. Austin flew to Europe. Time passed, life didn't stand still. Anthony's life seemed frozen and stagnant. Anthony suffered and missed him, feeling angry and frustrated. Yes, Anthony admitted to himself that he couldn't live without Austin, but he wasn't going to beg. He wanted to fly to Europe, find Austin, and talk, but he never did. 6 months passed like this. Austin never left his mind. The initial anger that filled his consciousness gradually faded, leaving only longing. Anthony fell in love. That was the only way to describe the feelings he had for Austin. It was useless to keep suffering because this story was already over. One day after training, Anthony stepped outside and walked towards a group of friends, his steps faltering when he saw Austin among them. Austin was smiling brightly and laughing, hugged by friends on either side. "Anthony, look who's flown back to us," Steve said with a bright smile. Anthony met Austin's gaze. The whole world slowed down. Anthony forced a smirk and extended his hand. "Hi, Austin." His voice didn't break, which was a relief. Austin looked at him wide-eyed and slowly raised his hand. Their palms clasped in a handshake. "Hi, Anthony." Austin's deep, husky voice made Anthony nervous. Anthony quickly shakes hands with his friends and heads toward his home. When he turns his head near the entrance, he sees Austin following him. This is just torture. Austin stops and looks into his eyes. Anthony gathers all his strength to hold on. "I have something to say to you," Austin began. "I'm listening," Anthony replied. "First of all, I want to apologize for our last conversation. I shouldn't have pressured you about introducing me to your parents and acted the way I did. But I felt like our relationship had hit a dead end. Only when I flew to Europe, calmed down my anger and hurt, was I able to look at everything rationally. In the end, I realized that I can't be without you." Austin spoke quietly and calmly, lifting his gaze to Anthony, then continued. "I came back to ask if we could try again. Let's bring back what we had and continue where we left off," Austin finished. Anthony blinked a few times, threw his head back, and laughed nervously. "Is this a joke? You left me with my feelings, which still haven't let go." "Yes, Austin, I still think about you and it infuriates me. I hate you for coming into my life, showing me how good it could be, and then leaving. And now you come back and apologize because you couldn't think clearly and were angry and hurt," Anthony fumed, looking into Austin's eyes, a storm of emotions inside him. They breathed deeply, glaring at each other. Austin gently grasped Anthony's clenched fist with warm fingers. "Please, I don't want to fight anymore. Just answer my question about us." Austin looked into Anthony's eyes with fear. Anthony glanced down at Austin's long fingers on his hand. "I've realized a lot too, Austin. I don't owe any explanations to my friends. I have one life, and I'm perfectly fine sharing it with you," Anthony said, finishing his sentence by hugging Austin tightly. He didn't want to let Austin go, wanted to hold him close and never let go, to be in those strong arms and hold him tighter. "Let's go to my place?" Anthony whispered, looking into his familiar eyes. "I thought you'd never ask," Austin smiled. "Never doubt me, yourself, or us again," Austin whispered hoarsely. "Never leave me again, or I'll handcuff you to the radiator," Anthony joked. They started laughing, looking at each other. They spent the next 2 days together, talking, discussing their fears and doubts, supporting each other. They talked a lot about their feelings, understanding more and more that they wanted to be together. Maybe they needed that break to realize that they ultimately wanted to be a couple. Their friends found out about their relationship, laughed, and patted them on the back, and their parents accepted it. They realized their relationship wasn't just about rivalry. It was love that had finally found its place in their hearts. Anthony and Austin became not just partners on the field but also in life. Their feelings strengthened, and they began to build new, deeper relationships based on mutual understanding, trust, and love.